with every cancellation, every postponement, now is the time to start reading. And it was never like there was never a time to read. Books are king. That's how we're going to increase your knowledge. And if you love to save on books, movies, and music, you've actually come to the right place. Navigate to alibris.com, a premier online marketplace for independent sellers of new and used books, music, and movies, as well as rare and collectible titles. We connect people who love books, music, and movies to more than 175 million items from thousands of sellers worldwide. This is a partnership with independent professional sellers, and Marty and Dick, the founders, decided early on that Alibris would be an at-risk partner, not a listing service. This approach attracted a large number of independent sellers and now enables Alibris to offer over 100 million books for sale. This is more than Barnes and Nobles and maybe even Amazon together. Right now they have a $20 off sale, and you can use coupon code NORA, NORA, to take $10 off of an order of $75 or more. You can use Roberts, take $20 off of about $135 or more. And then you can use Storm, STORM. I will have all of these coupon codes as a reminder in today's podcast. So again, navigate to alibris.com for all of these deals and more, and tell them that Felicia sent you. Now back to the podcast. So welcome back to the episode. I am endeavored to be encouraging and to have a bit of fun during this podcast. And I will be talking about updates on what's in the news now for COVID-19. Any funny stories I can share now that I'm truly on lockdown, and being a hermit anyways, this is right up my alley. I'm going to be reading from Chesapeake Requiem and reaction to the Obama letter evaluation on Antiques Roadshow on Monday. And I hope you enjoyed this episode and it relieves some of your anxiety and you find just humor in some of the ridiculousness that's going on. So one of the things I keep reminding myself as I read Chesapeake Requiem, it does bring back good memories, happy memories of the summers of crabbing, etc., as I've said, prior to the recording of this part of this segment. But I'm learning so much more about the history of the area of Virginia and of the country in general. And I wish I paid closer attention to the fascinating history of the War of 1812. And what struck me as I read this was not just how primitive the island was, but I didn't know that the British fleet rolled into the Chesapeake. And in fact, they handed us one of the most humiliating defeats of that war, because on my birthday, no less, we lost the Battle of Bladensburg, but they actually rolled into and had taken over the Tangier Island and made the islanders prisoners. The Rear Admiral Cockburn was actually really good friends with Joshua Thomas, the Methodist preacher from the previous chapter and the proclaimed leader of the island. And they were on a kick from that victory of Bladensburg and then the subsequent march on to Washington, and in fact where the White House was burned.
Wow, an interesting question.
And then it goes on to say on page 62, once back on Tangier, they readied for their next presumed victory, an assault on Baltimore, at that time the America's third largest city. I told them they had better let it alone, Thomas recounted many years later. They might be mistaken in their calculations, for the Baltimoreans would resist them and would fight hard for their city and their homes. Oh, said they, we can take it easily. Famous last words. In early September, as the British prepared to shove off, Thomas was informed he was to exhort the soldiers. And so John Thomas stepped into a small platform before the gathered redcoat thousands, officers flanking him left and right, and he started to shout. He talked about what made this once good, happy world so full of evil and misery as it is now, and what brings ruin on men, soul, and body. So he basically preached a fire and brimstone sermon, basically foretelling the nonsense that was about to befall the British troops. Sin, I said, done all this, he reminded them of the great wickedness of war and what God said, thou shalt not kill. Then he got down to business. I told them it was given me from the Almighty that they could not take Baltimore and would not succeed in their expedition. I exhorted them to prepare for death, for many of them would be in all likelihood die soon, and I should see them no more till we meet at the sound of the great trumpet before our final judge. This nervy forecast must have seemed far-fetched to the listeners, who prevailed in every encounter they had had with the Americans, at least in this go-around, but they sailed off to Baltimore and proved Joshua Thomas right. The city's chief defense, Fort McHenry, shrugged off the Royal Navy's bombardment. Redcoats on the ground suffered heavy casualties. The defeated attackers limped back to Tangier. The fell assault might have faded from memory like so many about the War of 1812, except that a young American lawyer and amateur poet named Francis Scott Key happened to witness the nighttime battle and celebrated in verse. Later set to music, his poem became the Star-Spangled Banner. Word of Thomas's bold exhortation spread even as the song gained popularity, and he achieved a stature unmatched by any Tangerman before or since. No plaques marked the place where he delivered his warning. The site was deep underwater by 1900. Nowadays, it's probably half a mile to sea, which brings up one passage of Sugar Tom's book that rings more or less true. When Captain John Smith first discovered the island, it was then thickly set in pine timber of old growth, and the land was much higher than it is now. Whenever a ditch is cut through our lands now, we are troubled with pine stumps. And as everybody knows, where there is a pine stump standing, well rooted, there was a pine tree there at some time. And I know the land has sunk at least 8 inches perpendicular since I was a boy. He didn't get that exactly right. Sugar Tom was born in 1833, and his book appeared 58 years later. In that time, the island didn't actually sink that much. Even so, he was on to something. What I found key was a reminder of that battle, or not so well remembered battle, and the resultant was the Star-Spangled Banner, and how even back in 1833 they knew something was going on with the erosion or the sinking or the rising of the sea levels, even noted then. But I'm just reminded about the resilience of this so-called backwards people, and how we're going to get through this latest war that we're going through at this time. And I can be at peace with that. So, what's going on today with COVID-19? The virus that just keeps on giving. At a glance, there are over 7,000 cases spread among all the 50 states as well as other reporting districts. 97 total deaths, and who is getting the most severe? It seems like anybody over 60. Protect yourself and be mindful that they are the most susceptible. It still seems that maybe even pregnant women and definitely little kids may be spared the worst of this, except if they have some type of serious comorbid illness. Fat chicks like me with high blood pressure and mild asthma probably need to stay out of the game too, because I'll have to work. If I don't work, I don't get paid, and I can't afford to get sick. Even if I did sick, it's probably a serious chance that I may not be able to get tested. The testing kits and reagents are probably still in short demand, or in short supply, I should say, as well as personal protective covers and gear. This is the latest numbers from CDC.gov. I'm using this now as my go-to now that I can actually trust the government again, because before it was a little bit sketch there. So let me start with debunking some myths. There was a severe respiratory illness vaccine that has been sitting for years in a Texas refrigerator in a research lab. We did start testing for the vaccine on Monday. However, rapid deployment to the masses is still about a year or so away, because they're not sure what dose is effective and even if it's going to work, and what unintended consequences there are from the vaccine itself. There have been some drugs in our fight from HIV and even the flu and immunotherapy that may actually be effective. And there have been recent posting and some very meaningful and encouraging results from a French research company as far as drugs that may be effective against this scourge. Ibuprofen does not increase the symptoms of corona. Sorry, you can take it to control fever as well as Tylenol. For providers and other healthcare workers, the illness is weird, and you should not rewear your personal protective gear. That's just stupid. And you guys need to take the minute to just breathe, because we've been talking about this realistically, if you were listening, when the first cases started leaking out in the beginning of January, the end of December. And we should be practicing good hand washing and hygiene anyways. So why is everyone tripping out and thinking that a wall of toilet paper is going to protect them from this very contagious disease? And let's not forget, in the time of influenza, that the flu kills several thousand people a year across the world. And that's real. And yes, I do believe Russia is hiding in numbers, and they're not being truthful. And I would be very, very frightened if I was in that regime, because I think they have gone on radio silence. It didn't seem to make sense to me that the next largest landmass next to ground zero is been protected from cases. And why aren't they reacting as much? It's because there is a wall up against truth in reporting, or maybe they lock their borders, and maybe the people People are protected. I don't know. I just don't trust them. Also, Amazon has made the decision to temporarily, it's probably for the next several months, prioritize household staples, medical supplies, and other high demand products coming into their fulfillment centers so they can quickly receive, restock, and ship these products to customers. They're working around the clock with their selling partners to ensure availability of these essential products, and they will continue to bring in additional capacity to deliver customer orders. You may actually get a job if you're not sick and you go there. They actually pay really well. And I'm also looking up something called Google Classroom. This is a service being altered that you can actually sign up for. They also offer a way to manage your classroom and actually teach your kids on how they can continue their education online. I think it's an amazing. It is pretty amazing, and I'm wondering how many school systems are in school systems signed up for it, because it actually is creativity, language and arts and culture. They have, oh wow, it is. This is actually probably one of the greatest resources I've actually seen, and I'm wondering if, since I have all this time on my hands, would it behoove me to actually get certified to be able to teach biology as well as teach biology or maybe history, because that's what I'm actually interested in. It's actually a great resource, and it's actually free to all the schools. I think that's pretty amazing. If you're worth $1 billion, this is an amazing way to give back. And I wonder if you couple it with the Chromecast or even with the Apple product, this is the way we're going to continue the education process by not being interrupted by this virus. Also, don't forget, we all are human and continue to be human. Simple acts of kindness, checking on neighbors and families. Be mindful that the kids, even the most surly teenagers, are feeling a heightened level of anxiety. Please take care of yourself, but also remember to be kind to each other. And I actually love music, and just so you know, with a lot of the venues being closed, as well as many of the stars are actually have been started live streaming, including Miley Cyrus, John Legend, Bono, Luke Combs, Garth Brooks, and Chris Martin from Coldplay. They all, if you follow them on Twitter or Instagram, they're dropping new music. Uh, are streaming new music, as well as sharing music and covers online for free. They know that people are locked in, and I think this is a way for them to reach out and to do what they do best: entertain and just make people happy. And I thought I would read, because I am completely convinced if we had a different president, even with the Alzheimer riddled Ronald Reagan, they would have said words to us that would have been encouraging and that we could trust, and then we wouldn't have been thrown the double middle finger up to. And I looked to what time in our history have we been kind of accosted on all fronts when life has been so disrupted. And they made a point this morning and spoke about at the time of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's initial inauguration in 1933, our country had been ripped apart by World War I. We had just survived the flu pandemic. Wall Street had been in a free fall, and we were in the grips of a major depression. And he stood on his inauguration day, and with determination and with amazing zeal, he basically gave the most encouraging message that I think is applicable now. So I'm going to take this time to read to you the first inaugural address by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And if you don't take anything from my read or this particular episode, I hope that above all, these words are encouraging and you will not be fearful and you will find solace in the words of probably one of the great leaders of this decade. So here I am repeating and read for you the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I'm certain that my fellow Americans expect that on my induction into the presidency, I will address them with candor and a decision which the present situation of our nation impels. This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honestly facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert, retreat, into advance. In every dark hour of our national life, a leadership of frankness and vigor has met with the understanding and the support of the people themselves, which is essential to victory. I am convinced that you will again give that support to leadership in these critical days. In such a spirit, on my part and on yours, we face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things. Values have shrunken to fantastic levels, taxes have risen, our ability to pay has fallen. Government of all kinds is faced by serious curtailment of income. The means of exchange are frozen in a currents of trade. The withered leaves of industrial enterprise lie on every side. Farmers find no markets for their produce. The savings of many years and thousands of families are gone. More important, a host of unemployed citizens face the grim problem of existence, and an equally great number toil with little return. Only a foolish optimist can deny the dark realities of the moment. Yet our distress comes from no failure of substance. We are stricken by no plague of locusts, compared with the perils which our forefathers conquered because they believed and were not afraid. We have still much to be thankful for. Nature still offers her bounty, and human efforts have multiplied it. Plenty is at our doorstep, but a generous use of it languishes in the very sight of the supply. Primarily, this is because the rulers of the exchange of mankind's goods have failed. Through their own stubbornness and their own incompetence, have admitted their failure and abdicated. Practices of unscrupulous money changers stand indicated in the court of public opinion, rejected by the hearts and minds of men. True, they have tried, but their efforts have been cast in a pattern of outworn tradition. Faced by failure of credit, they have proposed only the lending of more money, stripped of the lure of profit by which to induce our people to follow their false leadership. They have resorted to exhortations, pleading tearfully for restored confidence. They know only the rules of a generation of self-seekers. They have no vision, and when there is no vision, the people perish. I didn't know he said that. Wow. The money changers have fled from their high seats in the temple of our civilization. We may now restore that temple to the ancient truths. The measure of the restoration lies to the extent to which we apply social values more noble than the monetary profit. Happiness lies not in the mere possession of money. It lies in the joy of achievement and the thrill of creative effort. The joy and moral stimulation of work no longer must be forgotten in the mad chase of evanescent profits. The dark days will be worth all the costs, all they cost us if they teach us that our true destiny is not to be ministered unto, but to minister ourselves and to our fellow men. Recognition of the falsity of material wealth as the standard of success goes hand in hand with the abandonment of the false belief that public office and high political position are to be valued only by the standards of pride of place and personal profit. And there must be an end to the conduct in banking and business, which too often has given to a sacred trust the likeness of callous and selfish wrongdoing. Small wonder that the confidence language, for it thrives only in honesty, on honor, on the sacredness of obligations, on faithful protection, on unselfish performance. Without them, it cannot live. Restoration calls, however, not for the changes in ethics alone. This nation asks for action, and action is now. Hand in hand with this, we must frankly recognize the overbalance of population in our industrial centers. By engaging in a national scale, a redistribution endeavor to provide a better use of land for those best fitted for the land. In our progress toward a resumption of work, we require two safeguards against the return of the evils of the old order. There must be a strict supervision of all banking and credits and investments. There must be an end to speculation with other people's money, and there must be a provision of adequate but sound currency. So shoring up the currency, stopping all these tricky speculations, and stop doing it with other people's money. Well, he would have had a fit if he saw the last great crash and what happened with the mortgage bubble, and etc. There are lines of attack. I shall presently urge upon a new Congress in special session detailed measurements of their fulfillment, and I shall seek immediate assistance of the several states. Through this program of action, we're going to put people to work and put the national house in order. Improve international trade relations, though most vastly importantly, are in point of time and necessary secondary to the establishment of a sound national economy. I favor as a practical policy the putting of first things first. I shall spare no effort to restore world trade by international economic readjustment, but the emergency at home cannot wait on that accomplishment. So how did he provide for that? He advocated for a balance between the executive and legislative authority by following the Constitution and aid in a speedy recovery. But he used sound judgment as far as those things that he instituted by a swipe of his pen. A revamping of the banking system, a creation of Social Security, and putting people to work. We face the arduous days that lie before us. Oh, and putting the banking industry on task for how they contributed to the fall and the Great Depression, and how we had to have checks and balances truly in place so that could never actually happen again. But it was a stepwise, well thought out plan for recovery and for protecting us in the face of such great adversity. He says, "For the trust reposed in me, I will return the courage and the devotion that befit the time. I can do no less." We face the arduous day that lie before us in the warm courage of the national unity, with a clear consciousness of seeking old and precious moral values, with the clean satisfaction that comes from the stem performance of duty by old and young alike. We aim at assurance of the rounded and permanent national life. We do not distress the future of essential democracy. The people of the United States have not failed. In their need, they have registered a mandate that they want direct, vigorous action. They have asked for discipline and direction under leadership. They have made me the present instrument of their wishes. In the spirit of the gift, I take it. In this dedication of a nation, we humbly ask the blessing of God. May He protect each and every one of us. May He guide me in the days to come. And that is how you give us. That is a speech, how you could give directions, and it's some insight into what is to become and how you're going to proceed in a measured, in a calculated way, in a way that makes sense. This is how you endear trust to a nation, not any nonsense of whatever is going on today. And I implore you, if your blood pressure goes up and your anxiety goes up when you listen to our dumbass in charge and any of his minions speak, don't listen to him. Find your happy place. You can listen to my podcast, have an extra session on one of the TalkSpace apps. Get the information that you need as far as closures and diversions, and any updated policy information on your state websites, as well as from the CDC, as I said, since I trust them again. But don't you despair. This time, although it's not going to come to a rapid end, I am in agreement with the experts at the CDCs. We got several months of waiting and being in isolation. But you are not alone. And that's what I want to stress with this. You are not alone. We are all in this. It's okay to be anxious, but continue to try to find those things to decrease your anxiety. And normalcy will come back. We just have to demand it of our leadership. I don't think you're going to get this type of sane and calming words from the current leadership, but you can always look back and look to the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and even Martin Luther King, as well as John F. Kennedy, and President Lincoln, previous, and of course, the great Barack Obama. You will actually be duly encouraged if you look to those gentlemen for guidance. And I also wanted to do another read as far as something that I saw on Antiques Roadshow. My Monday nights are usually filled with watching back-to-back episodes of Antiques Roadshow on PBS, and then binge watching whatever show on television. So it was no little effort when I saw President Barack Obama's letters to an acquaintance they valued for over $30,000. And I swear the appraiser was just having complete orgasms while he got to evaluate and read these letters. And what struck me was how this guy downplayed it. He said something that struck me as offensive. And I just want to read you my reaction to it. I knew he would be successful at something, but not as the first black president of the United States. Who the fuck would say something like that? And I'm so sorry for cussing, but what the damn hell? Really? So I was like, really, no name white boy? Explore So I decided to explore why I got so offended. President Barack Obama was the first black president and arguably one of the best of the century. And when we read those letters, you had his policy, which he enacted almost verbatim in your hand, but those letters are over 30 years old. And you seem to make light that you were in the presence of greatness, and you seem to be trying extremely hard to downplay it all. Dude, what was your contribution? What's your claim to fame? Will you return to the obscurity after you place those papers up for auction to be sold to the highest bidder, like our people, as it were? It irks me that the power and the importance of what you have held in a folder somewhere, probably forgotten until recently, seems to be lost on you. How crude, how rude. I wonder if the former CEO of the Carlyle Group, in his bid to save history, will, or if he will buy those and place in President Obama's library. These letters are from his formative years, but the formation of great policy that we have regained our importance in this country you had them in your hands. The importance of his words and the scope of his message of love and hope are so meaningful in this time. And I'm wondering if you, beige boy, knows you were in the presence of greatness. And what can you now do to make amends? Because shame on you for your indifference or apparent indifference. You were in the presence of greatness, proof of which you had in the palm of your hands, and you didn't think he was bound for even better greatness or more greatness. Really, boy? Seriously. How dumb are you? And how dare you be so dismissive? Do you know how many people wish they had that encounter? Do you know what a major opportunity you had? How dare you be so obtuse that not be in awe of who you were in the presence of, one of the greatest leaders of the century? Your calmness seems dismissive, as if you couldn't recognize his greatness or superiority beyond your limited view. Player hater, do you know what you lost? And that's all I got to say about that. That interaction was probably the most annoying interactions, and I was completely floored that nobody dragged this mother online, because his reaction or lack of reaction was what galled me, because what we're going through now and how angry I get even at the mention of this guy speaking, our current dumbass in charge, and leaving and have him follow up with one of the greatest presidents on the planet. I can't even imagine. That's just like Grant following up Abraham Lincoln. I'm just saying. But I hope that doesn't deter you from reading history, fact checking, as well as watching the Antiques Roadshow. With the exception of this guy, it's actually that and Who Do You Think You Are on TLC, as well as Finding Your Roots also on PBS. I find an amazing encouragement and entertainment value out of all those shows. But this is the first time encounter on Antiques Roadshow just had me fuming. But anyways, and I hope you enjoy this segment, part of the segment, as much as I've enjoyed creating it and fussing about it. Thanks. This podcast is my path of entertainment and a form of therapy and an outlet for creative freedom. But if you don't have this outlet and you're struggling with depression, anxiety, or addiction, call 1-800-273-8255. It's available 24 hours a day, every day. And there's also an on-site chat feature at suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat/. If vodka is your problem, call 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. Then there's also apps like TalkSpace and Doctor on Demand that will actually be able to help you right where you are in the privacy of your car at a fraction of the cost of conventional therapy. It's okay not to be okay, and it's definitely okay to ask for help. Please navigate to www.Dale's Angels Inc. for all special offers and updates on nerd news, as well as you can drop me a line at TennesseeFroisReading@gmail.com or even leave me a 2-minute non-trolling message at 423-463-0658. All non-trolling messages may actually be read or played during the podcast. If you like what you're hearing and you want to support continued great content, please become a patron at podbean.com/The Talking Fro or put 5 on it and leave me a tip at PayPal.me/Felicia DAI. And I hope you have enjoyed this podcast as much as I